We have O.H. Skinner standing by on the program. He is the executive director of Alliance for Consumers Action to talk about what states are doing to rein in abusive lawfare and why this matters, particularly if Republicans do not maintain control of the executive branch in 2028. This is a personal issue for me, as I have a friend, Jim Trupis, I've told you the story of him many, many times, who is continuing to endure prosecutorial persecution and lawfare. And thank you for joining me on the program. So some states have gotten ahead of this, and if we get a Republican governor in Wisconsin, I mean, we could be off to the races here. But it's good to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, you've nailed it, right? At the end of the day, we all know that everything that was happening under Biden, whether it was criminal stuff or whether it was trying to control what you could have in your house, what kind of dishwasher, what kind of washing machine, they're trying to control your life. And now they don't have control in Washington, so they're going to the states. And luckily, a lot of states are starting to figure out that they need to push back. And so in Kansas, they just passed a bill and overrode their Democratic governor with a veto-proof majority that basically said you couldn't use these public nuisance lawsuits to go after cars, guns, dishwashers, any of these things, because, you know, if you wanted to live a California lifestyle, I'm pretty sure, Vicki, you'd know how to move to California and become a wackadoo if you really wanted to.
So what they're doing, and this is it's exactly what's happening in Wisconsin. It is sort of an unexplained lawfare process. You take an existing statute, public nuisance, okay? In the case of Wisconsin, it's a banking statute. You twist that into an attack on something that is utterly unrelated. In the case of Wisconsin, it is the behavior of my friend Jim Trupis representing President Trump in 2020. In the case of some of these other areas, it's how do we ban guns? We'll use public nuisance lawsuits, or we'll use different types. In Wisconsin, they've tried environmental regulations. They're doing that to try to force climate change policy by going after dairy farmers in Wisconsin. So this model is what you use to stop it. Public nuisance means this. Banking is this. You know, you can't stretch the language to mean whatever you like it to mean.
That's exactly right. And at the end of the day, you know, these judges are still judges, and they will take the opportunity to find a mouse hole, you know, where they need an elephant in the mouse hole. But what's nice is that when you have a legislature and a governor that are aligned, or you have a legislature that can override the governor, you don't have to spend $20 million to win a state Supreme Court race. You just go through and you say, you can't use public nuisance against licensed, lawful, regulated products. You use it if somebody's dumping something in a river. You can't use a banking statute to go after somebody for political purposes. You can't chase people for their First Amendment rights. You clarify the statutes because all these statutes have a purpose, right? A purpose that was like, you know, stopping people from dumping things in rivers, stopping people from committing an actual crime. And then they're expanding them. You're exactly right. They're morphing them because the left has figured out that they can get things from the courtroom that they can't get even from a Democratic legislature, even from a governor on their team. So they're hoping that they can use courts to reshape America and punish their enemies.
Bingo.
And the number one thing we need to do is just redraw the lines on what courts can and can't do.
So
right? That's the number one way to do it.
Look what the federal judges have tried to do. So Boseberg just got smacked down because he was attempting to hold the Trump administration in contempt for using Immigration's Customs and Enforcement to do exactly what Immigration's Customs and Enforcement was told to do and what their charter demands that they do, what the law demands they do. So you had a judge trying to use contempt to stop immigration enforcement. And again, I don't know what we do about the federal judiciary, but states, you can get, we had Trump who's, pardoning people and commuting people's sentences and reining in some of the abuses at the federal level. But then what they do, like they did in Wisconsin, like they're doing in other states, like Utah, like Indiana, like, wherever else, they just descend into the state courts. And the states then themselves need to do very simple things, and that is simply clarify language. That's all Indiana did. That's all Utah did, is introduce legislation that clarifies existing statute so that it cannot be used for lawfare.
That is you've nailed it, because at the end of the day, Boseberg and these people, the federal system is working, not as fast as you and I would like, but at the end of the day, he issues something goofy and it gets enjoined by the Supreme Court or by the D.C. Circuit. The Supreme Court has almost universally been good. It's not perfect. No one's perfect. But the federal system is working. So you're exactly right. The left is descending into state courts. And look, you and I can't do anything about California courts. But we can go to states that are conservative and say, button it up and protect yourselves. Get ahead of this, right? The next 3 years are going to be the libs going to state courts and trying to get us. Then, so we have to prepare now while Trump is in office to protect our states, because the states are becoming the front lines for the left.
That's exactly correct. That is exactly what they have said they are going to do. That is exactly what and it should be investigated at the federal level as racketeering. They should use RICO to investigate the coordinated efforts to use state courts to implement national changes. That's something that's really, I wish we could get, Blanche or whoever to get aggressive about that. But in the meantime, at least I would say not just in red states, in purple states. And I'm hoping the Tiffany campaign is listening, because you can campaign on this. You can absolutely campaign on this. And if you don't want to make the case about my friend who did nothing wrong, he actually would have been in violation of the law had he not done what he done. That's too complicated. Then you can talk about how we are dragging dairy farmers into court, how we are dragging, businesses into court, how we are rigging the system so you cannot win. And that is something that's easy to run on, I think, and certainly tidying up language, because our Wisconsin Supreme Court, bunch of left-wing astro-Nazis, use that little bit of give in the language to run a train through a town.
And you have nailed it exactly. You can campaign. The lawfare comes in all sorts of different varieties, right? You're seeing it with your friend. At the same time, this same maneuver is what's an effort to take away what dairy farmers are doing, or to take away the car you want to drive, right? This is about guns and Super Duty trucks plastic straws and stuff. And it's easy to run on because people want to make their own choices, right? I want loonies in California to get to live a plastic strawless, carless, gunless life. That's fine. But I want the people in Wisconsin to be able to choose what they want to do, right? And people want that choice. People don't like being told by some judge or bureaucrat what they're allowed to buy, or whether they're allowed to have a big enough car to have as many kids as they want.
Yeah, right? Or whether their business will disappear because some fire department unloaded fire foam and all of a sudden there's PFAS in the dirt, in the ground. So yes. This is something we could have kind of gotten to this in our licensing reform, but that was, about 5-10 years ago, we did some licensing reform here. I thought maybe the next step would be to make it impossible to basically and then we should also talk about this kind of sue and settle, and then also try to drag people into court and put them out of business. So we've had lawsuits filed in Wisconsin against gun manufacturers. We have had regulatory actions taken against dairy farmers, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a version of sue and settle, which I've talked about on this program. Mm-hmm. So it's charge and get convictions, which is kind of the criminal version of sue and settle, because you've got a rigged court, you've got a rigged judge. But then you sue, and then you find a judge or an attorney general that's willing to just sign off on it, sign off on the consent decree. It happens federally, it happens at the state level. Every single legislature can do this in purple states. So, even Virginia maybe could pull this off. They're so mad at Abigail Spanberger right now. But certainly Wisconsin could pull this off. Minnesota's a 50-50 legislature. They could pull this off. All of the purple states could pull this off.
They could all pull it off. And to your point, at the end of the day, if you wonder why businesses are doing things that you don't like, including small businesses, you want to talk about sue and settle? If somebody comes in and says, I'm going to bankrupt your business, but if you put some electric charging spots in the front, stop selling plastic straws, and take down all those products in the back that I don't like, maybe I'll look the other way. Businesses have to, their livelihood is at stake, right? So the left is using this as a shakedown tool.
Absolutely.
But it's an ideological shakedown tool.
Absolutely true. And we've seen that. We could roll back to Act 10 when businesses were threatened with attack if they didn't put the blue fist in the window, or the businesses that are attacked by the political left because they wouldn't put the trans stuff for kids in the kids section, et cetera, et cetera. There's different types of different versions of this legislation out there. Is there one kind of white paper model legislation that you can use and then tweak? Okay, so this is 100%. The nuisance. This is how we're going to tidy up nuisance law, but this is how we're going to tidy up, contamination law. This is how we're going to tidy up safety, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, what we were focused on, the two things that we're focused on the most, because we see the left using it as a cudgel, is there's a model bill that helps get rid of public nuisance as a lawfare problem, right? It doesn't take it away, but it says the left can't use it for lawfare. And there's another one that you'll just appreciate, which is the left likes to sue over crime, right? Like you see these people, you see states where they have George Soros prosecutors come in, and then the left-wing trial lawyers team up with activists and they sue businesses because some porch pirate slipped on your front porch of your house, or they're trying to break into your business. We just saw this last night. I think Fox ran a whole segment on this in Portland, Oregon. Somebody was breaking into a store, was a shoplifter, fell and hurt themselves and sued the business, even though they were robbing the business, right? So that we've got model legislation on that. And the whole point is to basically stop them from being able to profit and shake down people using their ideological weapons. And it's very easy to tweak it state to state. And it's entirely designed, to your point, to be something that everyday people can get behind and purple states can pass.
Absolutely true. So go to Alliance for Consumers with an S, action.org. Alliance for Consumers, action.org to get more information on this. Mr. Skinner, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. Great to have you.
Have a good rest of your day. Talk to
you
later.
As well. And we will take a break on the Vicki McKenna Show.